Everyone thinks they know Julius Caesar, the conqueror of Gaul, the guy who crossed the Rubicon, the dictator assassinated in the Roman Senate. His life was basically a highlight reel of epic moments. But what if I told you that one of his most defining moments, a story that perfectly sums up the man he'd become, happened when he was just 25 years old? What if I told you that before he was a general, he was a hostage so insulted by his own ransom that he actually demanded his captors raise it, a hostage who bossed around the very pirates who captured him, and calmly, even jokingly, predicted their gruesome deaths. No, this isn't a Hollywood script. It's one of the most unbelievable but true stories from the ancient world, and it reveals 5 things you've definitely missed about Caesar's great escape. To really get the sheer nerve of this story, you have to picture the world Caesar was sailing into. It's 75 BC, and the Mediterranean Sea isn't some Roman vacation spot. It's a criminal's paradise. The sea is swarming with pirates, especially the feared Cilician pirates, who ran their operations with almost zero consequences from the coasts of modern-day Turkey. They were the terror of the seas, crippling trade, raiding towns, and kidnapping anyone worth a ransom. Rome was struggling to get a handle on them, partly because some Roman elites were secretly profiting from the slave trade these pirates supplied. Into this chaos sails a 25-year-old Gaius Julius Caesar. He's not the battle-hardened general we know from the history books. Not yet. He's a young nobleman, a decorated former soldier, and a promising speaker on his way to Rhodes to study with the best rhetoric coach in the business, Apollonius, the same guy who taught Cicero. He's traveling with a small crew, not an army, which makes him a very tempting target. As his ship sails through the Aegean Sea near the tiny island of Pharmacusa, his trip comes to a sudden halt. Cilician pirates swarm his boat, and just like that, the future ruler of Rome is their prisoner. The pirates think they've hit the jackpot. They have absolutely no idea who they're messing with. The insulting ransom. This is where the story takes its first wild turn, and it reveals the first thing you probably missed. Caesar set his own ransom. The pirates knew they had a Roman noble, so they demanded 20 talents of silver, a huge sum that could set them up for life. But Caesar's reaction wasn't fear. It wasn't relief. He just laughed. He laughed right in their faces, telling them they clearly had no idea who they had captured. He told them a man of his standing was worth far more than their pathetic little price. He then insisted they raise the ransom to 50 talents. Let that sink in. The hostage is negotiating his own price up. This wasn't just arrogance. It was a brilliant power move. Right from the start, Caesar seized control of the situation, establishing his own worth and framing himself not as a victim, but as their superior. The pirates, probably baffled but amused by this kid's audacity, agreed. Caesar sent most of his attendants to the city of Miletus to gather the money, a process that would take 38 days. He was left with just a couple of his people among a crew of ruthless criminals, and he was completely unbothered. The captive in command. This brings us to the second, and maybe the wildest thing you missed. For those 38 days, Caesar acted less like a prisoner and more like the pirate's boss. He completely flipped the power dynamic. The ancient historian Plutarch tells us Caesar treated his captors with a level of disdain that was almost funny. When he wanted to sleep, he'd send them a message demanding they keep the noise down. He spent his time writing poems and speeches, and would then recite them to his pirate audience. If they weren't impressed enough, he'd call them illiterate barbarians and savages right to their faces. Instead of hiding in fear, he joined their games and exercises, all while treating them like they were his personal bodyguards. And through it all, he would often flash a smile and tell them what he was going to do once he was free. He was going to hunt them all down and have them crucified. The pirates loved it. They thought his incredible nerve was just a kind of boyish joke from their weird, aristocratic captive. They liked him, they respected him, and they completely underestimated him. They thought he was kidding. He wasn't. The swift and ruthless revenge. The third thing you missed is just how fast and brutal Caesar's revenge was. The 50 talents arrive, the ransom gets paid, and Caesar is set free. Any normal person would have thanked their lucky stars and gotten back on their way to Rhodes. But Caesar wasn't a normal person. The moment he was free, even though he held no official position or military command, he marched down to the harbor in Miletus and put together his own private naval force. He just had a kind of authority that made people listen. He then sailed straight back to the pirates' island, and in an amazing display of carelessness, the pirates were still there, anchored right where he'd left them, probably counting their money. Caesar's fleet swept in, and he captured nearly all of them, reclaiming his 50-talent ransom in the process. He dragged his new prisoners to the city of Pergamon and went to see the Roman governor, Marcus Junius, insisting that it was his duty to execute them. But the governor was more interested in making a buck. He saw the pirates as valuable property and planned to sell them as slaves. When Caesar heard this, he was furious. He didn't wait for permission. He completely ignored the governor's authority, went to the prison, and had every single pirate crucified, exactly as he had promised. In what some historians call an act of mercy, he ordered their throats to be cut first, to spare them a longer death. The fourth thing most people miss is that this wasn't just some crazy adventure. It was a masterclass in building a personal brand. This story quickly became a key part of Caesar's public image back in Rome. And who do you think was the main source of this incredible tale? Caesar himself, of course. He was a genius at self-promotion, and this story was pure gold. It showed off every quality he wanted Romans to see in him: audacity, unshakable confidence, decisiveness, and the ability to turn a disaster into a spectacular win. It sent a clear message to everyone in Rome, from the common man to his political rivals. The message was, do not underestimate Caesar. He was ambitious, he was ruthless, and he always kept his word. This one event, which happened when he was just a private citizen, foreshadowed the very traits that would let him conquer Gaul, defy the Senate, and take control of the entire Roman Republic. The pirates failed to see the danger hiding behind his smile, and they paid for it. Soon enough, Rome would make the same mistake. A pattern of escape. The final, and perhaps most important thing you missed, is how this escape set the template for Caesar's entire life. This wasn't the last time he'd find himself trapped in a hopeless situation, only to get out of it through pure force of will. The pirate incident was a preview of a much bigger escape he'd have to pull off years later during his civil war against his rival, Pompey the Great. At the Battle of Dyrrhachium in 48 BC, Caesar's ambition nearly got him destroyed. He was laying siege to Pompey's much larger army when Pompey broke through his lines and routed his forces. It was a complete catastrophe. Caesar's army was starving and on the verge of being wiped out. For any other general, that would have been game over. But just like on that pirate island, Caesar didn't panic. He saw the disaster for what it was, adapted instantly, and led a brilliant strategic retreat that saved his army to fight another day. That escape at Dyrrhachium is what allowed him to regroup and later win his ultimate victory at the Battle of Pharsalus. Caesar himself supposedly said that Pompey would have won today, if only he were commanded by a winner. Both the pirate escape and the Dyrrhachium retreat show us who Caesar really was: a man of unmatched resilience, quick thinking, and an absolute refusal to be beaten. He didn't just survive his escapes, he used them as launching pads for even bigger victories. So, the story of Caesar and the pirates is so much more than a cool adventure tale. It's his origin story. It shows us a young man who already had all the makings of a legend: the guts to raise his own ransom, the charisma to command his own captors, the ruthlessness to follow through on a deadly promise, and the resilience to turn any disaster into a victory. It was an early warning to the entire world that Gaius Julius Caesar is a force of nature, and he was about to change history forever. If you enjoyed this look into a lesser-known slice of history, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories about the legends who shaped our world. And let us know in the comments, what's the most audacious move you've ever heard a historical figure make? Thanks for watching.